Welcome back, everyone. Today we are continuing on with the Allies and Adversaries set. 8 different ships in 1/2500th scale. And it might actually be a little bit difficult to figure out what you need to paint versus what will be covered in the decals. Starting with our Cardassian ship, I can see it looks like we need to do a little bit of hand-painted orange on these grills and some hand-painted light blue for this deflector. Looks like we can probably do a little bit of accent painting on these recessed parts, but by and large, after that, it will be done with decals. So our Cardassian ship might be one of the easier ones. The other one that'll probably be pretty easy is our Klingon D7. Now the D7 has a 2-tone paint job, and as I did on the 1/650th scale Klingon cruiser, we should be able to airbrush just the top surface here and get the proper 2-tone coloring. So hopefully we can just airbrush off the edges and try and just get the top surface of this D7. Here's my Cardassian ship with those orange, probably thrusters painted, and of course that little deflector painted in blue. And I think I might do a wash to bring out kind of those mechanical recessed areas. But other than that, I think the Cardassian ship is going to be ready for decals. Here is the D7 airbrushed from the top with that gray over the green. So hopefully you can see here the 2-tone between the gray and the green. And I think I'm going to have to see about getting this bulb or this bridge area back to being green. But other than that, and I probably have to do a little bit of silver on some of these accents on the nacelle. But other than that, the D7 is very, very close to decals. Looking at the Romulan Warbird, I think the only thing that need to be painted for decals were the caps for the nacelles. And I wish there was a hard edge between those end caps and the rest of the nacelle to make it painting a little bit easier. I have gone with green. There's 3 colors you could really choose from for the Romulan Bird of Prey. And of course, since the filming measure never survived, there's no definitive answer. Some people do it in copper. In the remastered episode Balance of Terror, it looks mostly white. I think in the non-remastered, the entire ship looks a little bit green. I decided to go with green because that's what it looks like in my old television recordings of it. And because it ties into future Romulan ships a little bit better with green. But I think the widely accepted colors will be white and copper for those nacelle end caps. Next, we'll have to look at our Klingon K'Tinga, which mostly will be in green and heavily weathered, but the front of this bulkhead, we do have to get that to a tan color. So I'll be using kind of these sponge applicators just to paint that front edge. Looking at the NX-01, if you take a good look here, you can see I have switched the nacelles around so they are on the correct side now. I think for the NX-01, I'm going to have to paint the deflector dishes copper and the fronts of those nacelles red. That might be just about all it needs before decals. All right, that's going to bring us back to our K'Tinga, and hopefully you can see here that we have kind of a tan front bulkhead. And the issue becomes what to do with all of this very intricate feathering and detail across the K'Tinga. I've decided I'm going to use a panel line wash. I'm using panel line accent color in gray by Tamaya. I'm going to use that to hopefully weather the ship and make it more look like an aged, weathered, battered K'Tinga that we're used to. I've gone ahead and added some of the silver accents to the D7. Right now, I can tell you probably the D7 is the ship I'm happiest with. I think it looks really good. I think the size and scale suits itself for a ship kind of with this level of intricacy and details. I think I probably have to do a little detailing right here. But all in all, D7, I think we're in good shape. I don't know that I'm getting really what I want from the K'Tinga yet. I do like the deck tan right here, but overall, I still think it needs a little something. I'm going to try a dark green on a lot of the accents, and then we might have to pull out the weathering kit to keep going on this one. On our NX-01, we have the nacelle caps done. We've also got a little silver on those needle points on the front. I think that you could do some gold and blue if you wanted to on this. I think gold dome, I think there's supposed to be some blue here. You could also do some blue on this chiller back here, but I think that's a little small for my skills. I've gone ahead and hand painted a few more details along the nacelles, the top. It's looking a lot more the way I'd like a K'Tinga to look. Even though I think it looks good, I think we need to get a little bit more detail. So we're going to try a little bit of dry brushing. And I almost never dry brush. But we're going to give it a try here. Well, dry brushing did not go well. Dry brushing went so poorly, I've stripped the entire ship down pretty much to bare plastic. And we're going to airbrush it again in our base coat. Then I'll go ahead and I'll try and repaint as much detail as I can again. Turning our attention to the Defiant, not too much to paint. The decals will do most of the work. I did want to do a deflector dish in blue, these two little red collectors in front, and of course just some of the blue for the back end of the engines. So this one's pretty simple, but it should be ready for decals. I did go ahead and put in the gold and the blue. You can see the gold for the little accelerators, the bridge dome, and I did decide to go ahead and do the blue for the warp nacelles, and I'm very, very happy that I did. It was not actually too tricky. I just did a brush. This brush was actually just thin enough to be able to go in there nicely. And then for a little bit of cleanup, it's hard to show all this on camera, but for a little bit of cleanup, I used a larger brush and got silver on the side, and I just went over the top of it to paint that middle part again. So we've got the blue for the inner part of the warp nacelle. We have the gold put on. We've got a little bit of blue there. I don't know if you can see it, but we do have a little bit of gold right here. So I'm very happy with the NX-01. Frankly, I think I'd be happy just putting like registry and landing pad decals. I don't know that it needs the full paneling. I think this is looking pretty good as is. But yeah, we will do the full Aztec paneling because that is provided in the kit. So the NX-01 is done and ready for decals. That means at this point we have the NX-01 ready. We have the D7, and once again, very, very happy with how the D7 looks. The Cardassian ship, once again, that one's ready for decals. The Defiant's ready for decals. Our Romulan warbird is ready for decals. And like I mentioned, we're back to almost square one on the K'Tinga. And that is just going to leave the Miranda class ships, and we'll talk about those in a moment. Now, the Reliant's tough because we all know the ship so well, and it has some of the most detail out of any of these ships. This was done for a movie, not a TV show, and we know a lot of the details because they're also reused from the Enterprise from the movies. So there's a lot of detail, and most of us who do Star Trek models or enjoy Star Trek will notice if those details are missing. Now, the decals are going to provide a lot of them, but there's a lot that need to be painted, and we'll see how many I can do and how well we can do them. Some of the things that are missing from the decals are going to be the blue accents that are here, the blue accents on these little phaser turrets. These big mechanical bays are not covered by decals. Those will need to be hand painted. Along the back, we'll have to paint the impulse engines. We'll have to paint these RCS thrusters here in yellow. Along the nacelles, these long grills are covered in the decals, but these front pieces are not. Those will have to be painted. The blue detail here is not painted. This blue detail may be one I lose. We will have to paint the black for the torpedo bay here. And one of the toughest parts will be doing the black on the front of the nacelle. And that's going to be a tough one. The little models really don't have many hard lines to help you paint those. And unfortunately, it is something that you do expect to see when you look at the Refit or look at the Reliant. So a lot of hand painting. I think we'll have to paint the little dome on the top and on the bottom. We'll also have to try and paint the mechanical grills on the bottom of it. So yes, there's going to have to be a lot of very tiny painting to get these little Miranda class ships to where they should be. I've been thinking a lot about this Celdon class ship and how to bring out all of the detail. And I thought a wash was a good way to go, but I didn't want a black or a gray wash. And then I remembered I have a rust wash. And I was avoiding that because rust, of course, you know, think old and battered and ugly. But with this ship being done in sand and orange, rust is actually going to fit the color scheme pretty well. So we're going to forget it's rust and just call it kind of an orange wash. And we're going to try and bring out some of the detail on this ship. All right, we're going to call the Miranda class ships done as far as paint. And boy, it is tricky hand painting these tiny little details. Can't say I'm 100% happy with it, but I think it'll look all right because you got to remember, we're zooming a lot in these videos, but all in all, these are little ships that fit in the palm of your hand. Very, very tiny. So I think I'm okay with it. Yeah, if you zoom in, you're not too thrilled about it, but I think it's all right, and I think it's going to look great once we get the decals on. And once again, this kit comes with 3 really big, very nice decal sheets. So we're going to have all sorts of paneling for the NX-01, for both of those Miranda class ships, including those nice grills, all the little pinstripes, all the windows. We've got decals for the Defiant. Looks like a wonderful decal there for the Romulan warbird, or the Romulan bird of prey, I should say. Then lots of paneling for the Cardassian ship. And that's what we're on to next, decaling up these ships. decaling done. I think it's been about a total of 3 weeks, but this set is done. 8 ships done in 1/2500th scale. This is the completed ships from the Allies and Adversaries set by round 2 that's coming out this fall. And I did find myself having fun with this build. I wasn't quite expecting that with this scale. This is a scale I don't work on that much, but it was a fun experience. I think probably the most fun part of the build was the painting, especially on the Klingon ships. And some of the most frustrating was probably trying to get the decals to settle down on some of the ships. But let's take a look at each of these individually. So first up, we have the Celdon Class, and I think this is probably the one where the decals may do it a bit of a disservice. This scale is actually big enough that it probably could be masked or painted, and if you don't want to paint it, you could just shade some of the panels with a weathering kit. I did do a dull coat on this. It looks like it might be due for a second dull coat because you can see it looks pretty good until you get a shine on those decals. Those decals are still making it look a little glossy. So hopefully after I do another round with a dull coat, it'll look a little bit better. But I think that angle looks pretty good. You can just see sometimes that, especially where there's little bumps and ridges or where the decals had to fit into a crack, you can see it's just kind of still a little bit above and looks a little plasticky on it. Overall, I think the decals look good. I think they're good colors. I think it's a good scale. I just think probably a little more of a dull coat on my part will really bring out the best of this ship. But the decals are good. The size is good. The details themselves are good. I think the painting for the blue and that orange, and then the weathering, you can kind of see this is weathered. It's kind of the panel liner rather than decals. I think that looks great. The very tip here, that is done with weathering. That's done with weathering. I think if I were to do this ship again, I would leave off the decals. I think I would only use decals that had windows on it, or the decal just for the insignia. And the overall paneling, I think some weathering brushes and pastels would probably do the trick a little better than the decals. Next up, we have our 2 Miranda class ships. And once again, a lot of decals here. I think that they settled down a bit better than on that Cardassian ship. So you can see lots of paneling detail there. You get all the red pennants. You get the red pinstriping. There are the sides of the nacelles, back windows. This is kind of the back of the ship. You can see the parts I hand painted, the parts that were done on decals. There's our underside. All in all, I think both of these ships do pretty well. I think the decals acted a lot better on these. Just kind of fit in a little bit better. So that's the Reliant. Here is the Saratoga. And the Saratoga, of course, has those weapons arrays on the side, and it doesn't have the roll bar. Overall, very, very happy with these 2 Federation ships. I think they turned out wonderfully. And once again, these are pretty small ships. We zoom in on them a lot in the video, but they are pretty small. So please be forgiving of any detail that gets kind of blown up. All right, now this is really where the ships start to shine. I think the rest of them are just absolutely fantastic. Starting with the Defiant. Once again, it could probably use another bit of a dull coat. But lots of little detail on those decals. Looks like I have one little wrinkle here on the nose. But very, very nice. And once again, there's a few just bumps on the bottom where if you catch the light wrong, you can really kind of see those decals stretched over them. Once again, it's a tiny ship. The decals do give you a lot of detail. And I very much enjoy the overall look of our Defiant. Now this might be the star of the set. This is the NX-01 Refit. And once again, I think it would have looked great without the decals, but I think the decals really bring out a lot on this build. So you can see I did go ahead and I did the gold for the top of the bridge. We did those needles. I did get the blue on the back of the nacelles. And this is a good looking ship. Of course, let's look at it from the side so you can see there's a little bent tip there. You can see that engineering hull that gets added on to actually make it the refit. There's kind of our back angle, much like the Enterprises we know, with that secondary hull and the nacelles up above. A very, very nice looking ship. Lots of nice paneling. Lots of very nice decals. You can see the red stripe there along the side. See if we can get a good angle. There you can see the paneling on the bottom of the saucer. There's a good front angle with those deflector dishes. But this little refit, a wonderful looking ship. I think the decals did nothing but add to the detail. I'm very, very happy with the decals on this one. I think it gives it a great metal, intricate panel look, and I think it looks great. It looks in scale. This might be my favorite ship out of this collection. Next up, another one where the decals really, really help. You get that gorgeous decal for the Romulan bird of prey down on the bottom. Windows are on the edge, windows up on top, more Romulan feathering there. This is a gorgeous little ship. I very much enjoyed the design of this ship. It's too bad it wasn't in more episodes in the original series, but a very nice, small, TOS style Romulan bird of prey. Here is our K'Tinga. This is another ship I just absolutely love. Once again, just a lot of painting, a lot of weathering, a lot of just bringing out the detail in the kit. The decals on this ship really just being for insignias. Different couple markings there. And it does provide that detail around the photon torpedo and kind of the idea of banks of windows across the front. But overall, this is probably the sweet spot in between detail and decals. I don't know, it's a toss-up between this one and the NX-01 for which one is my favorite. I definitely like the K'Tinga. And yeah, I don't know. I think they're both great ships, but I probably like this one a little bit more. That brings us to the final ship. This is the older version of the Klingon battlecruiser. This is the D7, very similar to the K'Tinga in that a lot of painting. And it's a pretty simple job on the D7, just kind of two-tone between a silver gray and a Klingon green. I got some silver accents there on the nacelles, silver accents up on that engineering deck. And once again, the decals are mostly insignias and marking decals. You can see them kind of down there on the bottom. Also, you do get decals for the front bank of windows and just the idea of some of that stair-step detail on the back. All in all, I think this is probably going to be a must-have set for a lot of Star Trek model kit collectors. First of all, because you get a lot of ships in a very small amount of space. That's kind of the appeal to this scale, especially if you were able to pick up the Enterprise set with the 7 different ships. A lot of great display options here to take that movie era Enterprise and pair it up either with the K'Tinga or pair it up with the Reliant. Once again, it's great to have the second version of the NX-01. And, you know, I think it would be great to actually have the Deep Space Nine model kit with this collection. And yes, I know that the debate rages on about what size that ship is, what size that station is really, but these ships will look great with it. You can add a few Mirandas. We know Miranda ships were involved in the Dominion War. Klingon battle cruisers are kind of everlasting. The Defiant, you could add in a second one there. Especially if you have one of the versions of the kit that didn't come with the Cardassian ship or the Defiant. But lots of little ships you could add to that station. You know, I wonder how it would look next to the K7 to take that little D7 and put that with the K7 space station. The Romulan Warbird is of the same era. Just a lot of cool little displays you could have set up with the addition of all these allies and adversaries. And it's a fun experience getting to kind of spend some time working on really small ships. I've done just kind of the bare minimum as far as it comes to painting and decaling. I'm absolutely sure there will be people out there who paint every feather on the K'Tinga the way you do on the bigger ones. So a lot of opportunities still left in these builds. But even if you just did what I did, which is some real basic painting and then decaling the ships, they look good. It's a great collection. And once again, thank you guys for following the build. It was very fun to kind of put together. A little stressful to have to paint and decal on video, but I think the end results are pretty good. But overall, thank you guys for following the channel, and I'll be back soon.